All right, everyone. Welcome to the WEBRTC Working Group Meeting, February 17th, 2026 for the W3C. Next slide. We follow the W3C IPR policy. Only companies listed below can make substantive contributions. Next slide. So this is our February meeting. Future meetings are March 24th and April 21st. So mark your calendars. Here's the meeting info. There's the link at the top. And we need a scribe. Let's see.
I'll do it.
Thanks, Tom. Next slide. We follow the W3C Code of Ethics and Professional Conduct. We're all passionate, but let's keep it cordial and professional. Next slide. We use the Google Meet controls for raising and lowering hand. Next slide. Some info about our document status. Not changed. Next slide. And here's our agenda for today. We had a little more relaxed time here, or there was some change from media stream track processor, audio track generator. Paul sends his regards. He couldn't make it today, so we're going to postpone that one. So we have a little bit more time. We will try to adjust the time slides, the time slots accordingly. So hopefully everyone, if anyone needs more time, we can hopefully be accommodating. Next slide. So this one is mine. Next slide. This is an update on NROP 2026, which was announced last Thursday. There's an article there from Mozilla Hacks that you can see. WEBRTC was a focus area in NROP 2025 and was largely a success, I think. And WEBRTC is a focus area again in NROP 2026. And there's a link to the new NROP dashboard. The focus we agreed on is on what we call single browser failures, meaning that of the three engines, Chrome, Firefox, and Safari, the tests, we're going to focus on tests that pass in 2 out of 3 browsers. And this boils down to about 417 tests that you can see in the screenshot here. Now, bear in mind, this is a filtered view and shows only the tests that we're going to focus on. Next slide. Right now, the official dashboard currently lists more. Go ahead, Harald.
Previous slide, please. Could you mention what the numbers stand for here? I mean, 344 out of 417, that means what?
Yeah, so the filtering that's going on here is that this is filtered by, you see on the left, there's a label called NROP 2026 WEBRTC. Unfortunately, there's a limitation where labels can only be applied to tests, not to subtests. However, the filtering mechanism allows you to filter by subtests. So you can get a filtered view that's showing a subset of subtests and the top level tests that they are in.
Oh, I was wondering whether 344 is represent a pass or fail.
Yeah, so pass right.
Yeah,
Okay.
so it's how many passes out of total. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. That clarifies.
Awesome. Yeah. So next slide. The limitation is that labels can only apply to tests, not to subtests. So even though we can do filtering like count equals 2 status pass, right now that would cover everything that we had passing 2 browsers today. But over time, that's an unstable link, and I think NROP requires a stable criteria to track progress over time. We're working to fix this by adding. Well, we could have split it a couple of ways. We could have taken. There's about 42 tests files. We could have split in half. We called one _NROP. That was one approach. The other one, which we chose to do here in a patch, is to add variants. That's something we did for NROP 2025 to exclude S-frame. we can add a variant to a test file where it basically behaves like two test files. And that way we can apply labels to those two. So there's basically one variant for interrupt 26, and the other one variant is the remaining tests. So this is what we're proposing. Basically, this avoids test duplication compared to separate files, which might have to duplicate some shared code helpers. Minimal and reversible. Basically, the line changes are fairly few. It preserves git blame, but it does have some cost where it's ignoring lint indentation in order to achieve that. And the last one is that for ideal harness, which is a totally automated test, we can't really do filtering. We can only narrow it by interface. So we still have to either solve that there's like, I think with the device filtering, it still pulls in about 26 extra tests that are not technically following the criteria of must pass into browsers. Comments and thoughts on this? Ewan?
You're muted, Yuan.
Yes, I am muted. So the first thing I would like to say is that the current list will evolve over time, and the plan is to have like a pretty stable list by end of Q1. But basically, we want to review the tests. Some tests might be excluded. I looked at the first one, for instance, that I plan to exclude because it doesn't make sense. The test is somehow wrong anyway. So I think that all people interested should review tests early on that they want to include and to exclude as well. And I also think that it would be good for the community at large to identify tests they would really want to be included. I think that as long as we receive early feedback, like I say in Q1, that we should work on specific tests, then we can discuss and include them. I don't think that right now the test set is totally fixed. So how do we organize this? I don't really know. What I know is that I want at least one test to be excluded, for instance. So I guess I can file a WPT issue, or we can have some document that details which test we plan to agree on and so on. So that's something I'd like to discuss. I see Harold on the queue.
Yeah, I'm a bit surprised at this approach, actually. Previous interrupts, we've actually focused on something that we know. We knew what focus area we were having, but this seems like a test, like a way to just pick out a random statistic. I mean, we've had lots of issues with WebRTC tests that actually turned out to be not the problem with implementations, but problems with the tests. So I'm wondering what's the argument for saying, okay, here's the number 417, let's get that down, instead of saying let's work on these particular functions.
So my personal desire to have WebRTC PC be included in Interrupt 2026 is that I had to do some compatibility investigations, and I discovered that some very small issues were triggering big issues. And so fixing issues where we know there's a failure is good to do, and we have not been very good. So that's why I'm pushing for looking at WebRTC PC, which should be stable now, and where we know there are still discrepancies, to actually go through the test and fix as many as we can. So the scope is WebRTC PC, which is pretty large, and we had to choose an initial list of tests that were meaningful, and that would not be too big, because otherwise then we would not be able to complete it. So that's why we ended up with this initial list of single failing tests.
Yes, thank you, and I would agree with that. I would point out that this is only the base spec over TCPC, which is quite mature and requires has strict criteria for adding new tests to. So I think it's a good starting point. And also, it was initially proposed to do the whole repo. So this adding the criteria of 2 passing browsers, it's a way it basically cuts the effort in half. And I think that the idea of if 2 browsers can agree on something, then it's probably worthwhile. If 2 browsers have implemented something, then it's probably worthwhile for the third one to implement it. And it's probably possible for the third one to implement it without too much effort. So I think that was the thinking. That also means I should mention that each vendor will work on different tests, but the trade-off basically is that we work on our tests, you work on yours, and together we all benefit. Guido?
Yeah, I was going to say something along those lines, that this is an initial set of tests that was chosen because if 2 browsers are passing it, the test is probably okay. It's more likely that the test is okay than the 2 implementations are wrong. Still, we have to go through each test to see if there's anything that should be excluded because it's not worth the effort, but it looked like a good criteria to improve the compatibility of the WEBRTC PC by focusing on things that already have two implementations passing the test.
Yeah, so we have an initial list, and we want something like a close to final list, at least a list that we are confident enough to work on. So I was thinking we could send an email to the WEBRTC mailing list asking for feedback, and we'll see whether people are interested in it. But in any case, each browser vendor will have to somehow validate that the test they're failing is useful to fix or is wrong. Or so how do we? So I don't really know how we collaborate on this actually.
Well, I think that's. I think I agree with you, and we should be open to basically anyone questioning this list and modifying it. But do you want them to open an issue on WEBRTC PC or on web platform tests?
I don't know. Yeah, I don't really know.
If it's for this working group, it might be better for use WEBRTC PC.
Yep, that sounds good to me. Maybe we could have a document in WEBRTC PC that is documenting the list of tests and the ones that we validated already. And as I said, we have like, ideally we would be finished by end of Q1, so it's one month and a half. So I was expecting to give maybe a bit less than a month for people to comment, and then we finalize by end of March, something like that. So would it be okay to send some message to the mailing list like that? And okay, and if so, I guess we should have a document. Maybe we can have like a document on WEBRTC PC where we have the list of tests that I can refer to, and this should be good enough. And we can modify it dynamically. So at least the editors can modify it dynamically.
Right, we should probably also track it on GitHub, ideally, but that sounds good to me.
It would be a Markdown GitHub document, so that every time you make a modification, there's a commit, right. So it's tracked. Yeah,
that sounds great. And okay. Also, I'd like to ask the working group. So this patch that I've been working on to add the meta files, I just want to get everyone's permission to merge that. It's still under review, but it might mess up your meta files because it's adding the !interrupt 2026. So when that merges to web platform test, you might see a lot of spurious, false positives or false negatives, I guess. So I just wanted to give a heads up about that.
Yeah, I don't know how it would work with our importer, our test importer, for instance. So if it's messing up with our test importer, then we might need to do something about it. How do you like we do not want to run an interrupt 2026 variant for our test runner for our regression testing. So yeah.
Well, I think it's comparative to if we split it up into separate files. It would be one file. You can imagine one file having the same name as today, and the other one having an interrupt label, an interrupt underscore something at the tail. So I don't see a way. That's not what this patch does. This uses variants, but the net effect is the same, basically, that you have to modify your meta files.
So I don't know how many tests we are talking about, but I was thinking that we could also just split the tests in their own file, and then it's not redundant. And the files we want to exclude, we just have to exclude them. If it's not too much effort, but that would be compliant, that would be compatible with our test importer and test strategy in WebKit.
Right. I mean, you'll probably already have this for WEBRTC encoded transform, right? Because we did that for S-framing last year.
No, we don't have that. Yeah.
Well, the problem was we did it this way because it was we found it to be less effort because you don't have to worry about shared code helpers and moving them around and all that stuff. So this was the simplest way to do it. It's about 45 test files that were touched.
Okay, I can have a go at testing your PR and see how the importer would behave and report back then.
Oh, thank you. Appreciate that. All right, thanks everyone. Next slide, I guess. And there's a Pepsi update.
Hey, a short one. So for everyone who didn't join before, I'm Min. I'm the PM on the Pepsi element, although we don't call it Pepsi anymore. We call it capability elements. And in the last 2 or 3 weeks, we actually met with Jörn, Jan-Ivar, Guido in a separate meeting to make sure that we can discuss what is part of the MVP and part of the post-MVP. I'm not sure whether should I repeat what the element is about, or should I just like dive right into MVP and post-MVP items? Because I don't know how many people have enough context.
I think we can assume attendance at previous meetings. So
Okay.
maybe a brief intro.
All right. Okay, the brief intro is, so on the left-hand side, you can see a few buttons and icons. These are typically buttons, icons that are part of, for example, Meet or Teams or Zoom calls. You have probably seen it before. And the initial idea of this element is if these kind of blue buttons are offered, users can click on these buttons to give permissions to the conference website to use camera and microphone. Now, when we started with this project, those elements can only change the state of the permission. Now, we have discussed that we need more than just a change of permission state, meaning once you click those buttons, a functionality should be, like there should be a functionality on top of managing the permission state. So basically, this is adding this kind of functionality to those buttons is something we have discussed in the last couple of weeks to make sure, okay, what is part of MVP and what is part of post-MVP. Why was it so important for us to decide what is MVP and post-MVP? It's because this element is already running in an OT for over a year, and we really want to make sure that we are getting out of the OT state as soon as possible for conferencing websites and other partners to adapt those elements, and then we will follow up with a post-MVP. All right, then. So I tried to create this the slide deck in the sense that on the left-hand side you see the MVP part in green, and the right-hand side post-MVP part, and there's on the top right a TBD, meaning we discussed some of the post-MVP features or like functionalities, but we didn't necessarily align on every detail. Okay. So first of all, we will have elements which we call user media, camera, and microphone element. Initially, it was a permission element, which is now split into 3. As you can see on the left-hand side, with the microphone element, we will the developer will be able to show a use microphone button or a microphone icon. With the camera element, a use camera button or a camera icon. Yeah. Janiva?
Sorry, I didn't know if you wanted questions at the end or on each slide.
You can ask them on each slide as well.
Just to clarify, so I see on the left here, that's supposed to be the Chrome MVP, right?
Yeah.
Does that include microphone and camera element, or just user media?
It will be likely including microphone and camera element. So Thomas, the Edge said he can include them already in MVP.
But, I mean, I thought it was just going to be the user media element and the 3 shapes of that.
So the user element in the MVP will also have the 3 shapes of the blue button: use microphone, camera, use
Sure.
microphone, use camera.
Yes.
And then we said for the microphone and the camera one, you can call the icons. So because the icons only are not part of OT yet, so this is a new thing. So we don't want to enable user media element to call this icons only specific UI. Because then later on the transition will be harder. Because on your right hand side you can see the icons can only use with the dedicated dedicated microphone or camera element.
Yeah, I'm a little bit confused. But are you planning to include HTML elements with the names camera and the name microphone?
Yeah.
In MVP. Okay. Well, I think that is a bit concerning because we haven't. So these are supposed to be toggles, right?
So what I understood from our conversation is that we will, with the toggle, you mean the second click, right? So the second click will be this null event with the dictionary we discussed and the constraints we discuss in the next few slides. So it will be exactly the same as the user media, except that microphone and camera elements cannot use the combined button, cannot call the combined button.
But is that necessary for MVP if the user media element has the 3 shapes that you show?
I think the necessity is to have icons only. So icons only will be part of MVP, and if we have icons only in MVP, but would allow user media to call icons only, then I believe the transition later will be harder.
I'm not sure I agree. Maybe Ewan can speak to that. Ewan?
Yeah, my understanding was that there was the Chrome MVP, which was exit of OT very quickly, and that would be only the user media element. And then we would quickly follow with the microphone and camera element, where we need to discuss a bit more, see how we handle second click and so on. And I'm glad that we include that effort in the short term, but I would prefer that we dive into those issues and that we have a solution and that we have even a spec before Chrome ships it, because otherwise then we might end up into a situation where we disagree on something and it might be hard for Chrome to change their behavior based on feedback of the working group.
Okay. Okay, then we might have misunderstood there. But then let's discuss the other slides to see whether it still makes sense to have that without the microphone and camera element. Okay, then next slide, please. Okay, so for the stream mute and unmute, in my understanding, the stream and the mute unmute would also be applied to the icons only. But let's see whether it will also make sense for the blue icons as well. Okay, so in the MVP, we said it will be a read-only element, and it's the element stream with the element stream property. When you click on when we write CE, we mean the capability element. It's not as nice as an abbreviation as Pepsi, but to keep it short, click on the capability element, the CE, that doesn't have a stream. A click on that would ask for permission prompt, or sorry, show a permission prompt or ask for permission if no permission is granted yet. And after granting the permission, it will trigger get user media element and sets the resulting stream to the capability element. The second click, so click on the button again, fires a click event but has no other action, like not muting or disable the stream. And I assume this one could be equally applied to the icons only elements. But yeah.
Yeah, my understanding was that we were not clear what the second click would mean, and that from the MVP, basically there would be nothing. The second thing would be an opt, and that we know for sure that for camera and microphone, we want the second click to do something, which would be some kind of mute, but we don't yet know exactly what mute and mute is. And for the user media element, we were not sure whether we would do something like a click event or not. And the idea of not defining what would happen for the second click in the MVP would give us more freedom to identify precisely what we want as a behavior.
Okay, Tim?
Yeah, I second that. I think there are a bunch of kind of curious edge cases we need to be careful about, and I think we won't understand them until we've got an MVP to play with. The specific thing I'm thinking about is that we will often use that click to trigger a couple of other things, specifically the ability to play audio. So we'll use it as a user feedback, which enables audio play on an element. And so we need to be quite careful that doesn't interfere with that. And there's also the whole can of worms about enabling local IP address discovery, which is kind of tied to this in an ugly way, which I also want to make sure that we learn about in the MVP. So I think small steps is and finding out these kind of, there are a bunch of minority but really weird edge cases here that I think we need to be careful about, that probably don't crop up in Meet, but do in things that I do.
Okay, so I think maybe then we didn't we were not 100% aligned in the other call we had, because I initially, and maybe I'm not sure, maybe I understood Melissa in the wrong way as well, but I initially thought also Melissa installation said when we would offer the icons only, they would just exchange this button with their own buttons after permission has been granted, so that a second click would never occur for them necessarily. So the second click on the icons only, it would be a niche edge case that we can extend later. So that was my understanding.
Yeah, I think I might have been pushing for a second click, but I think I agree with you, and that if we can't agree, then if it's not needed for the MVP use cases, it might be better to defer deciding on it. Not that we won't decide on it eventually, but if it's not critical for the initial use case, maybe we wait with that one. And I had a separate question about the icon only. I also thought we were going to leave that out, because the icon only would. I'm curious what the use case is for icon only if they're not going to be toggles.
Let me quickly answer this question. So when a user enters a call and skipping the green room, skipping the first one experience, but didn't allow permission, then they would arrive in the in-call room with camera and microphone turned off. So in that moment, when users click on camera and microphone, it would show a permission prompt right away. Whereas currently, what I think Teams Meet and Zoom is doing is when users click a microphone or camera button in that moment, they show a pre-prompt saying, do you want people to see you in the call? And then they offer Pepsi button, a blue button. Users click on that, and then they see a permission prompt, which means it's an extra click. And remember that this is also something, Janiva, that you didn't really like to have these two clicks, which is why we would offer the icon only one in the MVP to cut out this pre-prompt. So that was my understanding. I mean, it's also okay if you want us to do less for the MVP. It's okay as well.
Yes.
But obviously, if we can offer these kind of things to Meet, Zoom, or Teams, I think it would be really nice for them to have the option to cut out another click.
Yes, I think we definitely want to get there for sure. And I've been advocating for fewer clicks. It's just, I think we're going to need more time to figure out exactly how the button will be working so that websites won't just put it there temporarily and remove it as soon as it gets clicked, but also have some purpose over time.
Okay.
Thank you.
Guido?
Harald first, I think.
Oh, sorry, Harald. Yeah.
I just wanted to point out that after the first click, you have the stream and the track. And if you have an event from the second click, then you can put all the handling of all the actions that you need to do on that probably in the JavaScript. You don't need the second click to have an effect. In fact, it could be quite confusing if the second click has an effect, as long as the JavaScript is able to catch it. So the second click fires a click event might be the best thing, even in the long run.
Guido?
Yes. Yeah, my understanding was like a intermediate of the two, so that we would have only the user media element, not the camera and the microphone, because for camera and microphone, since they're more dedicated, we could specialize them in certain ways that we have not discussed yet. So we want to know exactly everything we'll do, but for user media, we do have a well-defined use case and a way to do. And I agree with Harald that having an event gives you all the flexibility in that if the application wants to do nothing, it just ignores the event, and if it wants to do something, it can handle the event. And having a click event when you click a button looks quite natural, although we can double check if the click event is the right event for this. But yeah, on its own, it will do nothing other than fire an event at most.
Okay. Jennifer?
Yeah, no, I guess the goal was to get MVP out the door, so I'd be okay with not having an event. But Ewan?
Yeah, I think that exactly as Jonivar said, the goal is to have like the minimal MVP. And whenever we have something we are not sure about, and we know it will not be used because probably it will be a niche case. So it's not mandatory for MVP. We should just cut it and leave it like for the next meetings. And surely we will take a decision, which might be a click event, but we will not regret it. And if Chrome is shipping the click event and we regret it, then how do we do? So that's mostly why I'm saying, hey, let's just focus just on the mandatory MVP stuff. And click event is, to me, not part of it.
When you say click event, do you mean what it says here on the bottom left?
Yeah, the second click event. Yeah.
Because
the
currently it
second
says click button again fires a click event, but has no other action. So this should be clicking out of MVP as well?
Yeah, to me, there's no click event. There's nothing for now. And maybe because basically what web pages will do is show the button. When it's clicked, it will be removed. So the user will not be able to click it again. And maybe at some point, web developers will say, hey, it would be cool to keep it. And a second click event there would be very useful. And we will learn from them and do something. And adding an event handler is very easy. But it doesn't seem like the second click and this event handler is needed for the use case that we know of. Dom?
Like, is it even possible to have a visible HTML element that doesn't react to a click?
Yeah, you might be right. If it's handled this way, like I'm not trying to override anything. I just want that the spec is not specifying anything. What I had in mind is that the first time you click this button, there will be no click event because you actually want to have the prompt and then get user media is called and so on. If there's a click event for the first click, then I'm fine having a click event for the second one. I just do not want to have like special, special casing this second click based on whether there's a stream attached to the capability element or something like that. So that's just about it. Guido?
Yeah, my question would be, do you know what the origin trial version does right now? Because I guess if it does something, then whoever are using it are prepared for the button to react in that way. So
It was the question for me.
yes, in case you know, I know that this is more an engineering question than a product question, but we can. I mean, what I'm saying is that if the origin trial is right now doing something with the second click, whatever it's doing will probably need to be part of the MVP because everybody using the button is relying, or someone at least is relying on that behavior.
So the current second click is offering a permission prompt to revoke permission, which is something Viva does not like. But
Correct.
so this was implemented that way, but none of the partners who is using the element is exposing this element to the user after they get a grant, which means none of the users currently run into.
Okay, so doing nothing or adding an event later would be the same. I mean, would not be risky because they're not relying on that event happening right now. So if we add it later, it's okay too. So in that case, I'm fine with either way. If the click happens because it happens for all elements that are visible and it's at the right behavior from just the fact that it's an element, that's fine too.
But Guido, you have a point that we could do a short experiment like with JavaScript, register a click event and see whether the first click is actually triggering this event handler. In which case, I would expect the second click to also do that. And the plan is not to override or change anything like that.
Not specify anything there.
Yeah, basically. Yeah.
Tim?
Yeah, just to clarify something, I had a sudden doubt that I was understanding what was meant by second click. So I just want to clarify. The second click is within a session. It's not a second because you've granted the permission yesterday and now today you're back on the site and this counts as a second click. Okay, good. So it's all within a single session we're talking about here. There's no persistence. Good. I just had a sudden doubt that I'd misunderstood something. Thank you.
Sure.
Okay. Okay, so the summary is we don't have icons only. We don't have camera or microphone, dedicated camera microphone element for the MVP. We have a user element for the MVP that can call the 3 different blue buttons. And we don't necessarily need to change the second click to be a click event, but we can.
I think we would want to not say anything specific about a click event, and depending on whatever the default behavior is for an HTML element, I guess. In that case, there was some. I guess we were not sure whether a click event happens automatically or not for all elements of this kind.
Yeah, it would be interesting to do the experiment with the current OT, whether there's a click event in the first place and in the second case as well. And then we can finalize the decision.
Okay, Guido, I will ask Thomas to follow up with you on that one, okay? Because I'm not 100% sure whether I've been able to give him this task to do this experiment. Okay, thank you. Then next slide. Constraints. Okay, so we have discussed constraints, and part of the MVP, we said we want to expose a set constraints attribute, and it will have a dictionary of some constraints, which is called, or the default is audio is true and video is true. So we said camera and microphone will be on by default. For post MVP, the developer might be able to change it, but this is something we can discuss post MVP. And then there's a bare minimum constraint list, which is device ID, facing, mode, and then all constraints except constraints modifier like minimum, maximum, exact, and ideal. And this dictionary is set, but the developer can ignore it. That's what I understood. Okay. Good. Then next slide. Okay, device selection and preview. So we said that device selection, so there's a device ID, which is part of the constraints to get the stream, but it's not exposing to the user, meaning users won't be able to do drop down or changing necessarily their wait. So there are two things. Users cannot, or no one in Chrome at least, can change permission per device. So this is something which is not part of MVP or part of Chrome's plan currently. And the second thing is, wait, maybe I forgot, but we said the device selection is not exposed to the users, meaning I think the user cannot do any selection, right? There will be a default zone. Anyway?
So yeah, I think you're right, but it's more that I think whether Chrome wants to expose camera microphone selection in the prompt is up to Chrome, I think, because you do it by default outside of the capabilities element. But I think, and also there's no pressure from anyone to force a per device permission model. That's just something Firefox has. So it's more about having an API surface that accommodates the different models, because I believe in Chrome it currently works outside of capabilities elements. You get a prompt, you get to choose. You get an opportunity to choose your camera and microphone, but you're still giving permission to all cameras and all microphones.
Mm-hmm.
There's a subtlety there. So yeah, I think this captures it. Guido?
Yes, my understanding here is that basically that the only device selection capability here will be the device ID constraint, so that you can do that, but there will be no capability to switch the device on the fly just based on the prompt, or that the prompt necessarily has to offer different choices. So Chrome can continue to do the capability element the way it's done right now. That yes, doesn't allow choosing, although that could be changed, but also not allow changing while after the capture has started, which is one of the things that was considered for the future. Yeah. So
no requirement on the user agent in this case.
Yeah. So basically, what this slide says, I agree with it, which is that device selection is linked to providing the support for the device ID constraint.
But what I would propose, though, is that if the website does provide a device ID, like the ID of the device the user used last session, it would be nice if Chrome returned that one, right? Because the website is saying, yeah, I'd prefer, like, these constraints are optional, I guess. They're preferences that can be ignored, but it would be nice if it also had a function, which is, I guess, consistent with existing user media in Chrome.
I guess Chrome will use it in its get user media call. Yeah, we'll have to double check with the engineering team, but I would guess that's the way it would work, as long as no device speaker is offered. So
great.
Okay, then in the preview itself. So I'm sorry, just still there. Yeah, so the preview itself. So the new permission prompt for camera and microphone, which gives you like a camera preview and a microphone preview, will be also post MVP. So the permission prompt you will see in the first in the MVP will be the classic one, the classic with the 3-button ones, right? Then last slide. This is just like other TPD things we briefly touched upon, which will be post MVP, like giving visual feedback about the state transition. Also privacy focused stream in the sense that the stream can be by default be disabled, or the allow on button push idea, which we in Chrome already implemented it, but had to roll back because of privacy and security concerns. But this is something which we are still aware of, and we might need to rediscuss with privacy and security. Yeah, and that's it. I will update the slide reflecting what we said, so we can capture the MVP properly in the slide deck. Yeah, Jörg.
Just to say that I do not haven't followed deeply the allow and button push and all these things. But at some point, if you plan to move forward, it would be good to make a presentation to working groups so that we work ahead of shipping, basically.
Yeah.
If there's a spec, or if it's related to standardization, if it's purely Chrome specific, then it's fine.
Yeah, I believe allow and button push is an idea that user agents should be squarely in the user agent domain of managing the permission. So I don't anticipate the spec saying too much about it. Other than it's been a driving motivation for us to look at what capabilities elements can offer as far as new options that weren't possible before. But yeah, definitely future.
No, and I agree that that how the persistence of the permission is managed, that's normally the domain of the implementation, not something that needs to be specified. But.
And also, just a detailed question. I'm just assuming, and I shouldn't assume, but I'm assuming that when the user clicks this button and get user media is called, then the rest of the permission model works the same, right? So that means the website at that point can call get user media again, because there's either a temporary or persistent permission for the duration of the session or longer. Is that correct?
That's my assumption, but
Great.
we might need to ask Thomas when he's there.
That sounds good. Thanks.
Okay.
All right. I'm not hearing any other questions. Thank you, Min.
Thank you.
All right.
I also dropped from the call, but thank you for taking time to listen to the MVP. Bye.
Thank you. Bye. All right. Next is the SFrame update with UN. We're running about 5 minutes behind, but we started 5 minutes late, so that works.
Okay. So yeah, I'd like to do an update because there's some specs there's some spec work. So it's we're making progress on standardizing native SFrame support in specs, and also I think Bartosz and Kasper are there and are also planning to implement this in user agents. So just a recap that from past working decisions, we decided to start with a solution that is as simple as possible. So we use Transform to enable SFrame packagization. SFrame packagization is very restricted in how it's enabled, and if it's enabled, it's never disabled, for instance, at least for now. If we get some requests in the future, we might consider it. But for now, we want to be like a very restrictive set so that we can ship something. So SFrame packagization is per transceiver, but you can enable it by setting Transform either on receiver or sender, but it can only happen when the transceiver is created on offerer side. And of course, if you have SFrame packagization that is enabled, but you're not using an S-frame transform, the idea is that packets would not be sent and packets would not be received or would be dropped, basically. Next slide. So there's the AVT core S-frame payload specification. We had a meeting where it was recommended that in the payload itself, we had one bit that would tell us whether the encrypted content is basically raw format, with raw format being the format that we define in WEBRTC encoded transform that is surfacing to websites through script transform, or whether the encrypted content is coming from a packetized format. So either you do encryption, then packetization, then media-specific packetization, which should be S-frame, or you first do media-specific packetization, and then you encrypt. And so that's the 0 and 1 there. So basically that has some effect on sending and receiving side. Receiving side has to obey to this bit, but on sending side you have some options. Yes, Univar?
Yeah, sorry, I was reading this yesterday and I was a little confused. Is this basically whether S-frame is per packet or per frame? Is
No,
it the same?
not exactly. You could, for instance, pre-packetize. You could packetize. Basically, what per packet try to do is to have a packet, encrypt it, and it should be small enough that even encrypted, you can send it as one packet. But there might be cases where you're packetizing and then the payload is slightly big, and then you encrypt it, and it could be split into 2 packets. And so the T bit then will be set to 1, but the S-frame payload itself will be split in 2 packets. But in practice, yes, basically, if you're using the T bit for 1, the sender will probably make sure that the splitting never happens. And so 1 packet, 1 encryption, and at the end, 1 S-frame packet as well. Yeah.
So I'm confused. At first you said
Okay.
maybe no, but so mostly yes? Is that the answer?
On sender side, so the spec allows you to send 1 big payload that is in a packetized format, but that is too big to fit in 2 packets. So if the packetizer is generating some payload that is too big, then the S-frame packetizer will say, hey, it's too big, so I will split it in 2, for instance.
So
but I know it's, yeah.
Sorry to interrupt. The first packetizer you mentioned there is not the S-frame packetizer, but it's like the codec packetizer for HL364, for example. Okay.
Media-specific packetizer, yeah.
Okay.
But in practice, I would expect that the media-specific packetizer will make sure that the packet it produced and that will get encrypted will be small enough so that the S-frame packetizer will not have to split the content in 2 packets.
Okay. Yeah, sorry, I got confused because the ITF doc has separate steps for per packet S-frame sending, where it sets the content origin to packetized. And if it's per frame, it sends it to raw. So these packetized and raw concepts seemed one-to-one there.
Basically, in practice, that's probably what will happen in implementations.
Okay.
But you could also, there could be a case where you have an SFU and the MTU is different between the 2, between the sending and the incoming, and maybe the SFU will actually split 1 packet in 2, for instance, and you will end up in 2 packets with a T bit at 1 that will be needed to be recombined and then decrypted and then sent to the media-specific packetizer, depacketizer, for instance. Tim?
I'm coming into this late and so I'm not ignorant, but isn't that case covered by the S and the E bits already? Why do you need a T bit that's extra to that? Because the S bit says it's the start or the end, and like If it's one packet, it has both of them set. So you already know that it's a single packet or it's multiple fragments.
So the S and E bit basically will tell you that it's whether it's a starting or ending. So you can have multiple packets for a given frame. But even with raw content, you might have one S-frame packet that fits in one S-frame content that fits in one RTP packet. So you will have the S bit set to 1, the E bit set to 1, but it does not, and the T bit will tell you whether it's raw content or packetized content. So you cannot, just because you have one packet that is the start and the end, doesn't mean that its content is in packetized format.
Okay.
Yeah, so the T bit has some impact on the APIs, as we will see. So next slide. So yeah, how do you enable S-frame packetization? We're not saying whether it's per packet or per frame, but just how do we know that we should use the S-frame packetizer? The idea based on past meetings is that when you create a transceiver, you have the current event loop task to actually set the transform to be an S-frame transform. So the new S-frame function that you're seeing here would be like a native S-frame transform, for instance. And if you're setting it right away, as TOK1 or TOK2 are doing, then it's fine. It means that for that transceiver, S-frame is enabled. For TKO1, you can see the awaits. So the setting the transform happens in a different event task compared to the creation of a transceiver. And then there, it would mean that the setting the transform would fall, basically. On the answerer side, since the transceiver was created by the offerer, you're on the answerer side, S-frame is negotiated or it's not negotiated, but the answerer cannot do anything about it. So if the transceiver is negotiated, then setting a transform, the transform being S-frame, will actually succeed. It's the top right example in green. And in the other case, where you're trying to set an S-frame transform to a receiver with transceiver is not S-frame enabled, then it will fall. One case that I'm not sure about is whether we can step back transform to null in case the transceiver is with S-frame enabled. So if you look at the answerer side, you have the on-track event handler, you have the receiver, and you have a transceiver. None has a transform, so the transform is null and it's allowed. So I wonder whether you set it to an S-frame transform and you set it back to null. Either we should throw or we should allow it, and then packets would be dropped, basically. So I don't know if anyone has. Yeah, Harold?
If we want to drop packets, we should really close the transceiver. We don't need another way to tell it to drop packets. I think it's highly confusing to be able to change the transform at all, actually.
Oh, you can do that currently if you're setting one transform to a native S-frame transform, and then you want to change for whatever reason, it will be possible to do that. But what you're saying,
if you change to a different transform, then what happens to what mechanisms do we have to synchronize the changing of the transform to the incoming stream?
You cannot, meaning that the only thing you can be sure about is that an implementation should be able to say that no packet will go through without being transformed. But whether you can select precisely which packet will use transform 1 and which packet will use transform 2, you cannot, because you're in main thread, so it's racy anyway. So, yeah.
Yeah, I think it's racy, and raciness is a foot gun, and I don't like putting more foot guns in.
So you would say that
So I'd rather have us set the transform at creation time and before packets start flowing, and then say that never change it.
Okay, it's not done this way for script transform, for instance. So you can set transform script transform to.
I objected on script transform too.
Yaniva?
Well, I think we're in agreement. It sounds like Harald will be in agreement to not allow null then. Is that?
Yeah,
a
I
fair
think so. That's
position?
what I understand.
Harald?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Because
But,
I would agree with that as well.
Okay, sounds good.
If there's no purpose to set every option that we support in an API requires implementation and tests and all kinds of stuff. So if we can skip that, that's good.
Okay. So I'm fine with it. The only case is that it's slightly asymmetric, but I don't think it's a big issue.
Sorry, should we have the conversation about allowing it to change at all, or is that already settled?
I guess Harold can find an issue, but the thing is that it's already implemented this way in browsers, so I don't know how compatible it will be.
What's the effect of changing it? Do you have tests that prove that you can change it, and a use case that supports that behavior actually being useful?
I can check in WebKit, but probably you have tests. Yeah, maybe not WPT. I can check WPT as well. But the spec was written in a way that allows it, and I think that even though there was a refactoring, it's still the case. Yeah, Guido?
Yeah, I think we have WPTs that test changing the with a script transform.
Yeah.
But I don't think they're comprehensive in testing that there is some behavior that needs to be correct, just that everything keeps working, that the thing doesn't get disconnected, the frames keep arriving, and something like that, if I remember correctly.
Yanivar?
Just it sounds like there's a separate issue here, whether we were too lenient in changing transforms of any kind versus, and there's a specific case here about S-frame where we want to be more strict than the other cases. So I think we can hopefully discuss those separately.
Sure. I mean, we could say that if you set a transform to an S-frame native transform, then you cannot unset it. It would be slightly weird because with script transform it would not behave this way, but we can check that. In any case, the thing I want to avoid is that whenever S-frame packetization is enabled, you start sending packets that are not encrypted, or you start processing packets that are not that were not encrypted as well. And that principle is orthogonal to whether setting a transform or not. It will be enforced in another layer. Next slide. So the first slides were about adding S-frame, like S-frame packetization support in Transform. Now we are talking about adding S-frame per packet support, which is a prime use case for notably for WebEx. So there we have the RTC S-frame standard transform, the RTC S-frame receiver transform, and on receiver transform, given there's the T-bit, we do not need to do anything specific. But on the sender side, the sender can decide whether to do codec-specific packetization before or after encrypting. So there, the idea would be to add a type attribute per packet to the RTC S-frame sender transform. And similarly, there would be a per frame option. And these per packet and per frame options would be similar to the algorithms that were defined in the AVT core draft, basically. I'm not sure whether we want a default value. So we can, in terms of default, we could say that the type member is required, or we could go with a default value being per packet or per frame. Thoughts? Yeah, Oliver?
So earlier, just a question. Earlier you said the T-bit. So here this seems to say that if it's T-bit, then it's per packet, right? Or if there's no T-bit, then if T-bit is 0, then it's per frame. Is that? But earlier you said these edge cases where it wasn't that. So how would that work?
So when I was mentioning per packet is that there would be one S-frame payload per packet, and there you're never sure, depending on whether, like, you could have, it's never happening, but you could have a case where MTU is changing dynamically, and suddenly the packetizer is giving you something that is slightly too big to be put into one packet, and you would have to send the S-frame payload in 2 packets. But in practice, yeah, per packet would be the T-bit equal to 1 always, and per frame would have the T-bit equal to 0 always.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah.
And so I generally like this. I have some bike shedding comments on a future slide, so maybe we could do that later, where I would like to argue for script transform per packet support. But other than that, I like the design and the benefit of not only having to specify it on the sender makes things easier.
Yeah, we're not talking about script transform per packet support. So far, there has not been any request, so we can talk about that. There, it's strictly about adding native S-frame transform.
Yes, but on this slide, I would want to bike shed a little bit. Instead of type, maybe calling it S-frame colon for reasons.
Sure, we can change the name, yeah, or maybe like the values as well. In terms of default value, I don't know if we want a default or not. I don't know.
It might be nice, I guess, S per frame, since it's called S-frame. I guess people would assume it to be frame per frame by default.
Okay, done.
Yeah, I was just going to suggest the same.
Okay, let's go with that then. I think it's fine too. Next slide. So although we have the native S-frame transform, it's still useful for the script transform to be able to use the S-frame packetization. The script transform may do its own encryption that is different from the S-frame, the RTC S-frame sender or receiver transform. So, and I think that there are already on the wild a lot of script transform that are used just for doing encryption, and it would be good if they could, without changing the encryption scheme, switch to the new packetization. So the idea there is to add like something like a type S-frame on the top that you see, and that will say, hey, I actually want to use S-frame packetization. The support would be limited to raw content, meaning that the T-bit would be set to 0, at least for now. And you can see that there are variants there, V1 and V2. And the thing is we have to deal with the first parameter being currently a worker. So we'll do something like a variant, either a worker or a dictionary, and the dictionary would have a required worker member. So as to be able to keep the current APIs working. So if everybody's fine, yeah, Jan-Ivar?
Yeah, overall, I like it. I just had some bike shedding again about that I can present in coming slides where I don't know that I would like to see support. I would like to see support beyond raw content, but I'll argue for that later down. I also like your solution about the worker and dictionary. I'm wondering, in your mind, I mean, that's sort of a side tangent here. If this object, it does beg how you send data to the worker. If it's going, this is going to be a top-level dictionary. I guess we could add a message field or something.
I was thinking that we would stick to the other parameters. Like the other parameters will remain the same.
Right, but if you want to send it an object, excuse me, if you want to both provide the type field and send an object to the worker, how would you do that?
You pass these parameters as second and third parameters of the constructor.
Okay, all right.
Yeah. Maybe we could have this dictionary include everything. Maybe it's doable. I guess it's doable as another. Then we would have like two constructors instead of one taking a variant. That's probably possible. Yeah. So maybe we should do that. I don't have a strong opinion there.
Okay, we can work on that separately, I guess.
Yeah. Okay.
Thanks.
Next slide. Okay, so what about script transform and packetized content? So let's say that we have a script transform and we want to support tbit equal 1. Then there are some things that we might need to do, which is to expose this tbit info into the RTC encoded frame, for instance, on receiver side, at least. On sender side, we would need also to allow the script to set the tbit and maybe also set how to split the values. So I think that it's feasible. We don't have a request for that, so I'm still not planning to work on that. The only thing that we need to specify is what happened in the case where the script transform is receiving packets with a tbit equal to 1. We can either drop them or we can expose them, and it's up to the website to know that it's actually prepared, it's not raw content, or we could expose the tbit info. As of now, I was planning to go with option 2, which is doing nothing and exposing the packets, and it's up to the website, and leave that to another day, which maybe would come sooner. Jonivar?
Yeah, I would support that direction because I'm a little confused how, I mean, script transform exposes frame. So on a receiver, how would you even get a frame if you can't decode the packets?
So basically, you would get the encrypted content. Like a script transform is receiving data from the S-frame depacketizer, and the S-frame depacketizer would is getting some packets with S-bit and E-bit, and based on S and E, is concatenating all of them into an S-frame frame, and that's what would be exposed on receiver side. And then it's up to the script transform to decrypt it, and if it wants to, also it can depacketize it after decryption.
So my view there is that we shouldn't expose S-frame encrypted frames to script transform, and that all because I can't think of any use cases that require that. And actually, it would be simpler and cleaner, I think, to only expose to JavaScript things that have been reassembled, decrypted, and to the JavaScript.
In that case, you do not want to use the script transform with the S-frame packetizer, because currently what script transform is doing is encrypted content and then sending it using the VP8 or H.264 packetizer. And conversely, it's receiving on the receiver side, it's receiving data that is encrypted. So it's already exposed. It's just that the depacketizer is VP8 or H.264. What I'm planning to do there is to allow the script transform to still do encryption and decryption, but use the S-frame packetizer and depacketizer. So the script transform would receive frame, which would be S-frame frames from the S-frame depacketizer. And the question is really, are we okay with exposing S-frame frames with a t-bit equal to 0 or with a t-bit equal to 1 or both or whatever?
But what are the use cases of exposing S-frame in that case?
The thing is that currently encryption is end-to-end, meaning that it's happening between devices. But packetization may evolve different like the payload itself, the packetizer and depacketizer can evolve at a different pace than the actual encryption schemes. So for instance, S-frame has specified an encryption scheme that some websites are using standardized version of S-frame encryption, and it's not compatible. And maybe they will want to evolve as well with slightly different encryption scheme compared to the S-frame format itself. So they might want to implement the S-frame format itself, evolution, but they will still want to use the S-frame payload. So the S-frame packetizer and depacketizer.
Okay, that might be a use case, but other use cases have also been to add metadata and other things that I think would be cleaner if you exposed. If you want to decode S-frame, you have a way to specify that natively, and then the JavaScript can get access to the frames after they've been successfully depacketized and decrypted for reading metadata and that kind of stuff. So if we also want this new use case you mentioned, it might be good to have a switch on that or a type or an opt-in.
So whenever you are saying, hey, I want to do encryption decryption natively, you need to expose APIs to set or to add keys, which we've done for native S-frame transform. And if we want to bake that support into the script transform, it's feasible, but we somehow need to allow through the script transform to say, hey, I want to enable S-frame native support and I want to use VOWS keys and so on. And currently there's no proposal. There's a GitHub issue where I put some comments there saying, hey, we could do it this way or this other way and so on. I think it's compatible with everything that is being presented here. Tim, you're on the queue?
Yeah, I just want to, again, one of these clarification questions. If I understand it correctly, the packetization is something that matters both to the endpoints, but most importantly to the SFU. So what you're saying here is that we have a new packetization that isn't H.264, that isn't VP8, and might get applied to AV1 or some other future codec, and that is for S-frame, and that it basically hides the detail of what the underlying codec is and from the SFU. So the SFU doesn't any longer need to care what that is. And so does that inform that use case? That it's what you're saying here is, like, I have an SFU that is now doing S-frame and I want to do AV1 and I want to enable that by doing this. Is that what you're heading for here?
Basically, yes. I think that the S-frame packetization, as you said, is hiding whether internally this is AV1, VP8, or H.264. But more than that, the S-frame packetizer and depacketizer can process any kind of S-frame flavors, even S-frame flavors that are not standard, like previous versions that some websites are using, or maybe future versions, different encryption schemes and so on. And the S-frame packetizer and depacketizer does not care because it knows it's encrypted content and that it's a blob of data. And I think that, yeah.
That also applies to the SFU. The SFU doesn't care either.
Yeah.
If it's in the S-frame packetized format, then SFU doesn't care what you've done on top of that. And so it does gives you more flexibility about how you align the endpoints and the SFU over time.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. No, I'm in favor of it, of at least retaining that flexibility somehow, or granting that flexibility somehow.
Okay. Good. So yeah, as I said, the goal here is for the script transform to be able to use the S-frame payload and packetizer, depacketizer, and not change how the script transform is handling things, meaning that it would still handle things at the frame level and not packet level. I think it's doable. And maybe Jonivar is might be proposing something like this, like to go further. And I think we can discuss it. But the PRs I have in mind and the implementation effort that is ongoing will probably focus on native S-frame support and S-frame packetization, depacketization. And I think it's the end of my slides here, and we can discuss, or we can go to Jonivar's slides.
Yeah, I think we're running a little late, so maybe I'll go quickly on this if that works. Yeah, so you had previous slides with text in red, but it didn't mean you weren't proposing them, I think. So anyway, this was just bike shed. I care more about the API cleanly here. So for me, it seems that whatever, yeah, so the thing you're touching on, we need to figure out, which is what happens if the receiver creates a script transform without any knowledge of S-frame and it's receiving S-frame and how to handle it. I agree, we need to figure that out. But just purely from an API perspective, it seemed to me that if you should be able to, if you wanted to support use cases like metadata that are largely orthogonal to encryption, it would be nice if you could create a script transform instead of the S-frame transform and basically have things work the same. You can pass in an S-frame per packet key option or an S-frame per frame option, and you wouldn't need to set the type on the receiver. Receiver is using the T-bit, but where we have a core disagreement, I think, is what the script transform would naturally expose, and that might be tied to knowledge of existing implementation, but I don't see why it shouldn't work this way, that RTP script transform exposes basically the sender's unencrypted encoded frames to JavaScript ahead of S-frame encryption and packetization. And that the receiver, on the receiver side, it would expose, the script transform would expose received and reassembled decrypted encoded frames to JavaScript after the S-frame depacketization and decryption step. And that to me seems, purely from an API perspective, a clean split, but it might not match existing implementation. So is there appetite for that? And I have another slide about bike shedding.
I'm not against it. It's to do that, you need to control how you do the encryption and decryption, meaning that you need to add like the set keyframe, add keyframes, add encryption keys and set encryption keys and add decryption keys and so on. It's doable. Whether it's done this way at the script transform level or not, or whether in the worker, or whether you allow the script transform to do it in a more dynamic manner, I don't know. But so far, we haven't received requests for that feature. So that's why I'm not focusing on it right now.
That makes sense. I guess my feedback would just be that if we can at least have some bike shedding, instead of calling it S-frame, then we at least leave the door open for this direction. Would that work?
Yeah, I'm fine. I guess I was planning for versioning to leave that to editors and to the GitHub issues. I don't think we like, except if some members in the working group feel strongly about that. But I was thinking that the naming and so on could be left to editors.
Okay, but I think for the working group, there's still some, at least in my mind, confusion about what the script transform exposes in new edge cases that aren't really clearly spec'd.
Yeah, I think it's the case where you're setting the script transform and you're saying, hey, I want to use the S-frame packetization and depacketization.
Right.
And that's the case, you want more clarity.
Yes. All right, thanks. And one more slide about bike shedding for the working group. It's just, we now have, for these stream objects that are called S-frame encryptor stream and S-frame decryptor stream. And we also want to point out that it's RTP script transform, not RTC script transform. So I would like to propose another rename yet again, sorry. But hopefully this might be the last one. How do you feel about RTC RTP S-frame encryptor and RTC RTP S-frame decryptor?
I don't have strong feelings. I think if they're shorter than the previous ones, I'm fine. Shorter is better there. That's about it.
Yay, thanks. That's me. Next slide. We're running a little 10 minutes late, so hopefully that works. Next topic is get capabilities. Guido?
Yeah, that's me. Yeah, but we're good because we're not having Paul's presentation, so we're good. So I'm going to talk about initially I called it get capabilities for get display media, but I'll explain it more carefully what I mean by this. So there are some application features that work well if the user agent has certain capabilities and poorly if it doesn't. So knowing that capability before we start the capture is important for some of those cases, especially with get display media that always provides a complex dialogue to the user to select the surface to be captured. And we specifically have several use cases, mostly focused on audio. But there might be, we haven't heard of use cases for video properties, but there might be some. But the generality is, like for example, restrict on audio is a constraint that allows you to don't send the audio of the page that called get user media. So to take the audio from the page that called get display media. So the video call page from the captured audio for the surface. So let's say that you're capturing the whole screen. So you want to capture the whole audio in the system. But since the audio from the video call contains the audio of the people speaking in the presentation, you don't want to send that audio back. So the use case for restrict on audio is that it would be good to know if it's going to work before you request it, because if you request it and it doesn't work, so let's say you pass restrict on audio true, but you get false because it's actually not supported, then the user experience is going to be very bad. So in that case, it would be better to not capture audio, for example, to pass audio false. Yes, Juan? You're muted.
Yeah, thank you. So I'm wondering whether the website should not be able to say, hey, I'm calling get display media and I want audio if restricting on audio is that value. And if not, I still want to get video, but I do not care about audio. Is it something that could be phrased this way, or is it something where
it might?
actually-
I mean, this is an example, but it could be something different. It could be that an option is not offered in the UI. So there are different things that the application could do. It could decide to capture without audio, or it could decide. Or, I mean, for an application, it would be better. Okay, if restrict on audio is not supported, it's better to call with audio false. But it might be that what you want to do is change the UI and do something else.
So set the UI prior to calling get display media.
Yeah, for
saying
example,
that,
you might want, so say for example, the suppress local playback. So the suppress local playback is useful for applications that do like AirPlay or Chromecast type of protocol, where you start capturing and then you're going to be playing it somewhere else, but you want to stop playing it locally. So you might not want to show the icon to do that if suppress local playback is not supported, for example. So that's in that case, it's not that you want to capture, but then don't capture the audio. I mean, in this case, the whole point is to capture the audio. And if you cannot, if suppressing local playback is not supported, then the whole experience is ruined. So you want to not offer the option, for example. So you don't want the UI to have the icon to start doing the capture.
Okay, and the second question is if just the support of the property is sufficient. Like, you know that
not the support of the property. For example, in Chrome, we support those properties, but for example, restrict on audio is very variable depending on operating system version or platform. So the way it's implemented in Chrome is that all versions of Chrome say that it's supported, but depending on what the actual situation is, it might be the case that only false is supported, or that both true or false are supported. Because sometimes it could be a permissions thing. Sometimes, for example, in macOS, to capture certain things, you need extra permissions. So if you don't have those permissions beforehand, something will not work. It could be that one version of the operating system has an API that allows you to implement it correctly, but another version not. So saying that we support the constraint or not is not really viable.
That seems to leave some fingerprinting issues then. If a user, depending on the permissions, it has
well, that's an example. There are a lot of
there's a potential of fingerprinting issues then exposing that information directly without any kind of prompt. But yeah, maybe it's needed.
To some degree, depending on, of course, it depends on a lot of variables. But yeah, of course, if you know that something is not supported, then you learn something about the system. Of course, there could be many reasons why it's not supported, but some that are already exposed, some that most likely Geneva.
I hate to say it, but we could get this information on camera. If you're going to present, you're probably going to be visible. I don't know, maybe not. Like, so, yeah, I like the idea of solving the core use case for restrict on audio and suppress local playback. And I don't want to peek ahead on the slide deck too much, but I'm worried about exposing more than that. So,
I think I'm okay with starting that. So my proposal was that we could examine the properties and expose with capabilities the ones. Also, there's a case that yeah, more important, that the support varies per surface. So some surfaces you can do this restrict on audio for some surfaces, like you could do it for tab, but not for window or things like that.
So that would expose additional fingerprints then, but I guess no more than feature detection would.
Yeah, it's basically a feature detection. So yeah, let's defer the discussion of whether what to support and so on one slide after this. So the interface I'm proposing is adding a method called get display surface capabilities that returns a sequence of track capabilities, and then it returns an object per display surface type. So one for monitor, one for window, one for browser, because the support may be different for each. And that's it. So you would know if okay, this is supported for monitor or not supported for monitor, supported for window, not supported for window, and so on. And then the results should include capabilities for properties that can be used as constraints, so that you can do something about it. It doesn't make sense to expose something that and that are not privacy sensitive to, or at least as much as possible before capture. So of course, we would need to expose display surface, restrict on audio, suppress local audio playback, which are the core use cases that we have identified. Cursor looks okay, since you always have a cursor, and the rest we don't have a use case for them. I would exclude like device IDs, because well, first, it doesn't make any sense to expose them since it's not a constraint, and well, logical source like those doesn't make sense to expose them with high aspect ratio. You can probably learn a little bit about that. It would be a range that's not very useful. It reveals something about the sizes of the surfaces, but we don't have a use case, so I'm okay with excluding them. Resize mode, we could include it, since that's not exposing anything about the system. Frame rate too, but we can start without them. So the ones that look most relevant, because we have use cases identified, are restrict on audio and suppress local audio playback. Jennifer.
So I think I'm assuming you're mentioning a lot of these, like I would, because of the constrainable pattern.
Yeah.
And I don't think we should let the constrainable pattern guide us on this one, because I think these don't necessarily map cleanly to capabilities anyway, which are usually on the track. Like we do have on the media devices object, we have a get supported constraints field. That is a global method, effectively.
Yeah, but that only says if the constraint is going to be ignored or not. That doesn't tell you anything about the functionality that you support.
So maybe a similar method to that, but I would tailor it specifically to the narrow use case instead of trying to cover all constraints, because the constrainable pattern, I think, I don't think anyone loves it anymore. So I wouldn't let that guide us.
Good.
Yeah, whenever we talk about capabilities, it's fingerprint minefields. So I would try to find a solution where we are not exposing capabilities beforehand, or if we do, we
I don't think it's possible.
as much.
I don't think it's possible to
as
solve
much
this
as possible. So, for instance, the cursor thing, like if you look at cursor there, I don't think that cursor is needed. So I would exclude it, for instance. It might be that, as you said, we need it for restrict own audio or suppress local audio playback, but at least for some use cases, it might not be needed if we change the way Get Display Media works. In any case, my recommendation would be to file an issue on the PIN working group to get guidance, because usually whenever they're seeing like, hey, we have these capabilities, list of things, they want to be involved and see what they can do to help.
Yeah, I can file the issue there, but the question is, do you support us the use case?
So as I said, I don't really know much about the restrict own audio or suppress local audio playback. Initially, to me, it seemed like what the web page wanted was to not offer the audio checkbox on the prompt if they could not use it. And this we could solve it without capabilities. And it seems that what you really want to solve is like some UI shown in the web page that tells, hey, I want to call get display media if restrict audio will be set to true. And that's not something we can solve by changing get display media. So in that case, we probably need to solve it. At least we need to investigate it. So I'm okay investigating it. But I want the PIM working group to have a look if we go with get capabilities. If we do not find any other solution than get capabilities.
Harald? Muted.
Yeah. I'm kind of curious about this API surface, but along a different dimension. I think this is definitely useful, but I was kind of questioning, why do you want to tell anyone who asks what monitor and window and browser?
No, I want to exclude those. You mean monitor, window, browser? Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it would seem more natural, more common use, or more reveal less information per call if you put that key as an argument to get display surface capabilities.
That would work too. Yeah. That would work.
And in that case, if you go to the next slide, I would say that including width, height, and aspect ratio for screen would make perfect sense. But
there are other APIs
including them for browser would definitely make perfect sense too. So I'd reshape it as get capabilities. In get capabilities, you have to ask for about the type you're asking for. And by the way,
these are classes.
If you're using this for privacy invasion, then at least you can detect it and slow it down. So I think Ping might pass it.
So I'm not a fan of constraints, but have you considered making it a constraint to say only give me audio, restrict on audio or bust, basically a new constraint that would fail, or either rejected over constraint error or just not ask for audio?
I mean, that would be exact true, which we have explicitly forbidden.
Yes, we can make an exception.
But it's also a very bad experience because then you have to ask again. So you have to show the dialogue twice.
If we fail, we could have the modifier mean, just keep asking, but I don't want audio in that case. I only want audio if you can restrict on audio.
Yeah, that's what I was meaning initially. If, for instance, the web page could say, hey, I want to restrict on audio, but if you cannot support it, I just don't want audio at all. And the user will not even see in the checkbox that you can select audio. The thing is, as I understand it, is that you want the web page to show some UI before even the get display media.
In some cases, for some use cases that's necessary. Like for example, if you have the AirPlay Chromecast type use case feature based on that, you want to make sure that you can suppress the local audio playback before offering it. Because that's
But would it be possible to first call get display media, and when you discover that you will
you get that result.
Screencast? You're screencasting first, and then you're calling the display media. That's how it's done.
No, I mean the idea is that when you capture the audio is the audio. The effect you get is the right effect. So that you can particular for say restrict on audio, you might want to do something else. Yes, Tim.
Yeah, do you actually know this before the user's chosen what surface they want to capture? Like, is it always true that all monitors behave the same way, or that all applications behave the same way? Because I'm guessing that there'll be cases where before they've told you what they want to capture, you can't get this right.
No, well, you want to know, let's say, it's relevant, say, because if you are, for example, capturing a window or a monitor, in that case, you're capturing audio from the system or from a whole application that is not the browser, but might include the browser, might include the audio from the call. You want to make sure that you don't capture the audio from the call, that you exclude the audio from the call.
I understand the use case. I'm questioning is whether whether this get capabilities can actually give you the correct answer before the user told you which surface it's going to they're going to use.
Of course it can.
Okay, I'm mildly surprised.
It's not that. I mean, it's not that the browser is going to support. I mean, these are classes of display surface. So normally you can support the feature for like restrict on audio for say monitors and windows, but not for tabs, because for tabs it might not make sense, or you can support it for tabs too. But for the application, for example, for a video call application, I guess it would be important for, say, for Windows and monitors that it's supported in those.
Yeah,
and it's not that the browser is going to be able to exclude the audio from the calling tab, from the tab calling the display media, if you're capturing one monitor, but not be able to do that removal if you capture from another monitor. And if that's the case, which would be very, very exceptional, certainly not the case in Chrome.
Okay, I'm thinking of my own experiences with things like AirPlay, where if you set AirPlay, it comes up, behaves like it's a separate monitor, but actually some of the things you can do with it, like you AirPlay to an Apple TV or whatever, the way it behaves isn't exactly like another monitor. And I'd be quite surprised if you've got the same level of control over the audio as you have if it's really a locally plugged in HDMI. But I mean, I don't know. I'm questioning whether this is the right place to do it. And my gut instinct would be that if we can possibly get it in after you've already said what it is you're going to capture and you've been granted permission, but before the thing actually happens, that feels to me to be the moment to apply this logic. I think we do need an API point to do it, but I think that this is too early. I think it would be good to do it after
what kind of API would that be? That an API for permission to capture, and then an API for selecting what to capture?
No, I think you do all that, but as part of the capture, when you get the track, one of the things you can do is to say, well, look, is this behavior capability available on the track
all this
before you
information,
actually send it?
All this information is available after you start the capture.
Yes,
so
but
all this information is available, but that's too late.
Well, that's my question. Is it too late?
Normally, yes. Because
okay.
you know, okay, yeah, it doesn't work here. Now I have to ask the user again, for example. So you have to prompt the user twice. Jennifer?
Yeah, so I think that I would definitely drop the capabilities, constrainable pattern angle, and try a very targeted method, because whatever method we come up with here, if it's not going to be behind any permission, then web trackers are going to add it to their repertoire. I'm questioning it a little bit. If we return information that restrict on audio exists for monitor and window, but not tabs, what is the web application going to do with that information
The-
downstream? Because it can't force the user to only
because
filter
no,
those things.
it can't, but
Right.
it knows that it can know there are different things application can do. For example, if it doesn't work for tabs, but you really need it in the other two, and it's supported in the other two, then you can go with constants. If it's supported in one of them, there's an API that provides some hints as to what to steer the user to. So you could try that, or you could not offer the choice.
There's no. My point is that there's no standard get display media way of saying show the user only windows.
But there are the information is useful, because if it's supported in all the ways that you want, then you can proceed.
Then
Let's say if you have a combination that is not perfect, well, the application needs to do something. I mean, maybe it will inform the user, or maybe it will stop the audio track afterwards if it's the wrong one, and provide a degraded experience. There are different things the application can do, but there are certainly like knowing the level of support for restrict on audio and suppress local audio playback allows you to identify ideal situations and like really bad situations, and there will be situations that are so. And well, the application needs to decide what to do in those three cases. Yuan?
Well, sorry,
Yeah,
just the narrow observation was just that it seems to be returning information that's more granular than the application can act on, unless it's going to tell the user, click this button, and then when you get a prompt, make sure to pick a window and not a tab. That was my comment.
So a general comment, I think that there's consensus that there's an issue, and that what would be desired would be a highly focused solution.
That works. I mean, if we agree on supporting the use case, we can restrict it to support the minimal thing needed to support the use case.
So my recommendation here would be to start, for instance, with just restrict on audio or just suppress local audio playback. One of them. I don't know which one is most important. And then detail the use case, precise flows that we anticipate. It seems that one of them could be solved by calling get display media and not showing a selection of audio, but some of them might not. So and then we can decide how we can do things.
I'll double check and come up with an updated description, more targeted and specific use case or use cases depending on what they do. So I consult with partners and get back to the working group. Okay, that's all I have. So I guess that would be the action item for me to consult with developers and have a more targeted description of the use cases, so that we can go to minimal solution.
All right, great. I think we're almost at time. And the last slide is media stream track processor for audio track generator. We have to postpone, unfortunately, till the March meeting due to a conflict. Paul couldn't make it today. So, and he also needs more time to complete his analysis. So that's it, I think.
Yep.
All right. Thanks, everyone. Did we miss anything? Let us know. Otherwise, have a continued excellent day and see you again next month.
Take care.
Bye.